Justin, hello. We are back again, and we're going to talk about gold and silver, probably the least favorite commodities this past few years. I mean, the past year and a half. I mean, they've just been hated. We saw an initial run up after COVID going into August, where it seemed like inflation was taking over. The government was printing all this money, and we were gold and silver want to go to the moon. But since then, we've just been in a miserable bear market, which I've been getting stung a lot, but it's also been very nice to see because I believe it presents an even better buying opportunity. What are your current thoughts on gold?
So it was last week or the week before last where I think silver got smacked down to like 21 and change. Someone, I think we both know who, decided that they wanted to hold silver down and have their way with her. And
I'm not as much as a silver and gold as manipulated as a lot of these gold and silver publics think. Because I'll give you a counter argument. I'm not saying it doesn't happen because I believe it does, but I don't believe it happens at as great of a scale. So let's say gold and silver being manipulated by J.P. Morgan. They're dumping $1 billion worth of paper silver or one night. If I was say a sovereign entity, if I was Russia, I would say, hold up, this country over here they're manipulating the price of silver. If I buy the physical, then they're gonna get fucked, and I'm gonna make a lot of money in the process. So you kind of could see a war of the massive players going on, and we have never seen that. I'm not saying it doesn't happen because I'm pretty sure that it does. I'm saying it's not a fact that these markets are manipulated, though.
Yeah, so here's kind of like my kind of thoughts on that front, where if you started in, I think it was 09 or maybe 10, let's just say 09, central banks suddenly started becoming massive buyers of the yellow metal. And I suspect central bankers, probably know more than you and I do. I also suspect that there's no real direct incentive for governments to be 100% transparent. It's not that they would lie, but they might, drag their feet. They might be slow to update the reports. China's a good example of this, where maybe 3 or 4 years, China will come out and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, we bought more gold or whatever." So I would say what central banks are doing, that's pretty interesting, I think.
And speaking of that, Russia I think they're on their third. They've raised rates already like 3 times as inflation's been increasing, and they're talking about raising rates even more. And they're buying as much gold and silver as they can. They're loading up on gold. They're raising rates. They look like they're doing a lot for their economy actually, and their currency's been getting smashed. If I was a currency trader, I would be looking at going say along the Russian ruble versus the Aussie dollar, or versus the euro, or versus the dollar, something like that. I originally saw this on some newsletter. I'm not entirely sure who, but it does seem like a relatively good trade that I would be looking at if I was more of a currency trader, which I'm not.
Yeah, I would say that my guess is that countries that have gold will have a seat at the table when the next reset happens. And I suspect it's always a question of timing. In other words, I think the existing system will persist longer than people think it will persist. But when it finally collapses, the change will happen much quicker than people think it can happen. So it'll both take longer and less time. Talk about that's both sides of my mouth right there. Talking out of it, that I think will come to play. But it's
and I mean a reset. And what do you mean by when you say you think a reset has to happen?
So it gets back into, I think that, so this is just my gut feeling, but I think the U.S. doesn't necessarily want the dollar to be the world reserve currency, but the U.S. does want to have the ability to project power geopolitically through the financial sector.
Yeah,
so in other words, this is the old story.
We've had a lot of debates about this that I disagree with you pretty heavy.
Really? Did we?
Well, we talked about this quite a bit in the past. So you think that the government wants to eat its cake, eat its cake and have it too.
Who doesn't?
And I understand.
Do you not?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I want to eat the cake without the calories. That would be more important for me. But,
worms.
Yeah. So the reason why I disagree with that is because there's never been a country in history who has willingly given up world reserve currency. I don't think that will happen. I don't think it will ever happen. Once people obtain power, they do everything they can to hold on to as much power as they can, and even strive for more. Having the world reserve currency gives them power, and I do not think they will give that up.
Josh, I think you and I are saying the same things, but I think you're falling into some of the same logical fallacies that our good friends in the Bitcoin space and the crypto space fall into. You are correct. I don't think governments will give up power. It is also correct to note, I think from the prior two times when we had a massive currency regime, we also had a fair amount of war and bloodshed, quite a lot of death accompanied the change. So it's not really an easy process to go through. But I think this gets back into the cake and having the cake and eating it too. Power is derived through freezing out bad actors or people you don't like through the financial system. You basically ban them from touching SWIFT or ban them from touching any company who touches SWIFT on balance. So that means that if you decouple the world from the USD, or if you decouple the world from whatever the local unit of account that we use in America is, that solves Strickland's dilemma. And what solves the geopolitical angle is the United States decouples the world into a new asset they still control, or still have an incredible amount of meaningful influence over, which is to say, if the United States still wants to freeze someone out, they have the ability to freeze someone out. It's SWIFT 2.0. But getting the rest of the world to sign on with that's going to be an interesting thing. So I think you and I are saying the same thing. I think you and I are in agreement in this regard. And I think maybe the where we're not, even though we might be in agreement, where we're not in alignment, is I think there's a mechanism to do the decoupling, but still retain control of and when I say control, being able to freeze someone out. I think that's what's going to happen. Instead of SWIFT compliance, you're going to have XRP ledger compliance. And if a country's banking system isn't compliant with whatever bullshit they want to roll down the pipe, they'll be frozen out. That's my guess.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just disagree with the method. I think that the politicians will probably continue to use the dollar until it collapses. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, they certainly are. In fact, they've been running up the credit card. Who hasn't?
Mm-hmm.
Who hasn't?
All right. Let's go back to gold, and somehow we went on a massive tangent. Gold's so cheap, I don't even like it right now, and I love things that are cheap. That was sarcasm. Right now, I'm heavily focused on a certain shipping company, but I'm probably going to do a deep dive on a lot of gold miners afterwards and get some extreme long-dated call options, as I think over the next gold's more of a longer-term play, but I want the leverage you have with options to capture those longer term gains, which I think could be incredible. If I was old enough, I would open up a futures account and buy some options on like the price of silver, but you have to be 21 for that, at least for most brokers, which is kind of smart. But so I'll just do equities. I'll just buy long dated call options on some really fine gold mine equities and streamers or royalties or whatever, maybe some ETFs as well. It is just hated. No one likes gold at all, besides the remaining gold bugs.
And didn't Rick Rule, isn't one of his sayings that, the peak always occurs, or like the massive movement always occurs at the very end, right? So it's like slow, and then whoosh, or whatever.
And I was watching I was listening to a podcast earlier, and it was they were telling a story about Jim Cramer or whatever. And in 1998, he was saying the stock market is going to continue to go down forever. We seem to be in the worst bear market in history. We're going back to the 1930s, and this is going to be probably the worst time to be invested. The next day was the bottom in the market, and it started the rally to the 1999 dot-com bubble. And at the top of the dot-com bubble, he suggested 8 names that he said these are going to be the best names to hold over the next 10 years. 7 of those 8 names are all bankrupt. It is just to show at the top of a mania, everything looks extremely attractive and everyone wants in. At the bottom, it is ugly. And right now, gold is ugly.
Yeah. Do you know what I've been buying as collateral? Like, not so, it's both half as a joke, half seriously. I've been stocking up on champagne. like there's some high-end champagne that I really like.
I saw that you purchased quite a bit of champagne. I didn't know if that was for personal use or for what.
I don't know. It's
an investment.
Yeah, we'll call it an investment.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. I get a bitchy phone call.
I mean, it's on the business card anyway.
He's like, who audits the shit anyways? But
what are your thoughts on the gold mine? You go.
Yeah, so I guess the thing is, when it comes to me, I mentioned this before, but like the silver guys and the gold guys, and don't get me wrong, I consider myself fundamentally, I consider myself a real estate guy. But don't get me wrong, I love my metals and I love my crypto. So I have plenty of, and of course, GME. I have plenty of love to spread around. But I find it the crypto guys, especially the Bitcoin maxis, and then the silver bugs and the gold bugs, they all make the same mistake. Like, oh, the price is going down, or whatever, right? And my thing is like, well, if you don't want to be in dollars, this is even easier. You get more bang for your buck. So we should all be naming, if you're a silver bug or a gold bug, you should be naming your children Jamie Dimon.
That is if the price is manipulated by Mr. Diamond himself. Because there are no certainties, only probabilities.
So let me give you something that's darn close to a certainty, or still a probability, but darn close to a certainty. Banks have, and many other companies too, but banks in particular have massive compliance departments. Josh, the probability of this question, are those compliance departments to help the bank break the law, stay within the law, or do a bit of both?
Oh man, I have no clue. Yeah, I get that. They're going to do whatever they want. And you said it's probability question for everything. Oh, is it probable that these greedy hedge fund managers, they're going to short a company that's probably going to go bankrupt? And yes, that is probable. And yes, it did happen. But is it going to happen again at that extreme rate that you're thinking with GME?
Josh, what are the things? So, in addition to whatever points, people, you and I both know, I've got that was where I first got started. All my Forex energy goes into loyalty points, but let's not bore our audience too long. Members, I'll be honest with that. But one of the things I'm very much looking forward to, in addition to whatever points I can get kicked back, is there's a phone call, or I expect a series of phone calls to get from you and a few other people. I've made some interesting propositions to. And I'm very curious to see what how this will play out. And it'll be a good conference call. We can invite some more people to it.
Like I would be dangerously sweating if GME goes to the moon, because Justin gave me 7 shares, but I can't sell them until he sells his, and he's not going to sell. So I'm going to be sitting there because I have paper hands. I sell things instantly, especially when my conviction is not as high as Mr. Justin himself. But I mean, it's going to be tough. If his thesis plays out, though, then screw YouTube. I'm going on an island.
Well, like I said, you can get a Giga yacht. You just can't get my Giga yacht. I've already called that one. So just
I put them all on hold.
Oh yeah, but anyways, I guess when it comes down to the metals, I think the play that it goes back to the thing. I think it makes sense right now. It's a great time to cash out. Save your financial game. If you're playing the financial game, as we all are playing the financial game, with a little bit of metals, maybe like 10, 20%, of that. If you do want to, let's say, I'm sorry?
You mean physical metal? You mean physical metal?
Physical.
And I'm someone who owns virtually no physical metals, because I believe you hold physical metals to preserve your purchasing power. And that is, you buy metals to stay rich, not to get rich. I am not rich, so I buy the equities. So if gold and silver go up, the equities have a lot more leverage, so they could go up a lot more, especially if you're using long dated options. Those options have a lot more leverage in the stock, which can give you really nice returns.
Yeah, then you've got basically leverage on the leverage. Yeah, no, it's the play. If you can get the timing right, it's really the play.
And you're defining risk right away. So it's that's how I like to play it. I will probably be a options future trader in the future with more experience, because I know most people go bust trading futures, but you can also make a fortune.
Yeah, and the fortune you make is other people going bust. Never forget that. There's always someone on the other side of the trade. So
yeah, exactly.
But anyways, Josh, I think that's pretty much all I've got. You want to add anything else to that?
Until next time.